This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosts an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to Senator John Watkins. John, we very much appreciate your being back on. As we were talking some before we were getting mic'd up, we've been looking forward to this day since the session began back in January, but your busy schedule.
It's been a busy
Appreciate
schedule.
your being on.
Yes.
Representing Powhatan County and parts of Chesterfield and parts of the city of Richmond.
Correct.
And among the 40 senators, there are only 2 that were first elected prior to the time you were elected, because you had quite a long stint over in the House,
Right.
before moving over to the Senate. So we look forward to your talking to our viewers about whatever issues that you think would help them better understand either what has happened in the session, transportation or whatever, and what's kind of on the burner for this summer leading up to the next session.
Certainly. Well, David, I think I'll start off with what I felt was probably one of the key issues this year, and that had to do with transportation. As you know, I got involved in that very early last fall. And as a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, it was back about in August. And the governor had decided that toll roads were really the way that we should go, and in fact filed applications for tolls on Interstate 95. And that to me was just not workable. I felt that it would really diminish our commerce. It would diminish the flexibility of the people in the communities surrounding those very important roads. And I just felt I remember, I'm sure as you do as well, the Richmond-Petersburg Turnpike and the tolls
Oh, yes.
on that. And, I understand there are appropriate places for tolls, and there are some not appropriate places for tolls. So anyway, that's what really got me started. And I started visiting with the governor's office on a fairly regular basis all fall, and in fact drew up and introduced a piece of legislation that would pretty much have accomplished the same thing that what we ultimately wound up with. I went about it with a little bit different approach, and mine was more what I would call revenue neutral than what we wound up with. But the circumstances being what they were, I don't think we had a whole lot of choice but to move forward. So we had, it was sort of the perfect storm that was beginning to occur, and I think that the governor, recognized the issues as well. You had Standards & Poor's who had pretty much warned us that if we didn't address some of the issues that directly related to economic development, specifically infrastructure, that we were looking at a downgrade, and that was not tolerable either. And then the third thing, along with the tolls and the warning from the bondholders or the bond companies, we also had, over the past two administrations, authorized the issuance of bonds to augment, if you would, the transportation needs of Virginia. Well, when Governor Kane first authorized those bonds, it was about $3 billion, and then when Governor McDonald came in, there was another $1 billion using federal payments, and he actually sped up that issuance so that they could get more construction underway. And I think debt has an appropriate place, but I just think that transportation, needs to be paid for as you go, more so. I mean, we've sold all of those $4 billion worth of bonds, and that money runs out in 2017, 2018. So we were going to come to a grinding halt with regard to maintenance and road construction. And on top of that, I've got 5 grandchildren now. They are going to be strapped with repaying part of that. And I have a real problem with, putting all of that on them. So in order to proceed beyond that point, we needed to find another revenue stream. And that's in essence what occurred. The governor and the House really liked sales tax. And they liked it for a couple of reasons. One, it would grow. And secondly, it provided a mechanism that we could additionally fund revenues in Hampton Roads and Northern Virginia, which I think was a good idea, but you could have done it by just giving them the authorization or imposing, a 0.5% sales tax in those areas. We also switched the cents per gallon from a mechanism that won't keep up with inflation to a wholesale rack percentage price, which does keep up with inflation. It raised the tax in essence on diesel, particularly for trucks, and it lowered the tax just a little bit on automobiles. And then the governor took one other step, and that was the Marketplace Fairness Act. If Congress adopts that, then a significant percentage of the money that is raised by the Marketplace Fairness will be contributed to the revenue stream for roads. And if Congress does not authorize it, then there is an additional percentage that will go on the gasoline tax beginning January 1, 2015.
I like interrupting just a second. I like
Sure.
that Marketplace Fairness, the way it's named, in
Yes.
case our viewers don't know, that's really talking about Virginia being able to collect the sales tax on purchases that we make.
Internet sales.
Internet sales.
Well, and there's a little bit of an anomaly there too, because it is not a new tax.
That's right.
Today,
Yeah.
we have a sales and use tax in Virginia. The federal government has provided a prohibition on internet sales up to this time, unless there was a nexus, a rational nexus, with the location of the vendor or seller. And that's why people like LL Bean, Lands End, folks like that do collect the tax. But many of the folks that purchases are made through Amazon and other purchasing internet sites don't collect, and so they don't remit to Virginia. But Virginians, if they purchase the item, still owe the tax. Many of them ignore it, and they decide not to fill that form out at the end of their tax form, which is filled out every year, that provides you a place where you can come clean, and most don't. So, it needs to happen one way or the other, because the bricks and mortar folks, it doesn't matter. They have to collect, they have to remit. But if you go and buy the same product from someone out of state, out of the country perhaps, they get off with a 5% discount. And the citizens owe the money anyway. So anyway, I don't know if it will pass in Congress. They've been going after it for quite a few years and still haven't gotten it.
And I think the point at which I interrupted you, you were about to say that if they don't pass that, then do you all have some mechanism that...
There's an additional percentage that is added to the wholesale price of gasoline, and that will stay in place until marketplace fairness does pass, which, who knows?
Well, I'm sure that there's any number of states that would like to see that pass if they can.
Absolutely. I'm very closely tied to the NCSL, the National Conference on State Legislatures, and as a conference, we have supported the passage of that act for many years because of the inequities that it provides for the bricks and mortar folks that live and work in our neighborhoods.
So that was the big one from the session passed.
Right. Upcoming, I think it probably goes without saying, the settlement of how Virginia addresses the Affordable Care Act. The expansion or not expansion of Medicaid. We are facing a huge battery of tax increases that will begin in January of this coming year. And it is estimated that Virginians and Virginia businesses will pay somewhere on the order of $25 to $26 billion over the next 10 years in additional federal taxes that are associated with the Affordable Care Act. The question then becomes, okay, what does our participation in terms of the expansion of Medicaid, the state exchanges, federal exchanges, and the provision of health care generally in this country? And we begin part of that process this afternoon, as a matter of fact. The Medicaid Commission will start working on the reforms. It is absolutely essential that we come up with the appropriate controls and the appropriate regulatory structure with how Medicaid could be expanded and the ACA will get implemented to make sure that we are doing it in a cost-effective manner. There are savings that are available to us if we handle it properly. With the savings and with the additional health care that could be provided, we could come close to getting that $26 billion figure back in the form of what I will say is economic development, because most of it will be paid to physicians, care providers, hospitals, and individuals who are involved in the provision of healthcare services and insurance. So it's not like you are at the trough. We are getting the economic stimulus out of it if we do comply. But we've got to do it in a manner that is cost effective and efficiently put in place. And that's going to be a real challenge. There is a dichotomy. There are some people that want to see the ACA fall on its face. And I understand that. I was not a fan of the Affordable Health Care Act when it originally passed either. And it went through the courts. I was supportive of what Ken Cuccinelli as Attorney General did with regard to the Supreme Court case. But the Supreme Court has ruled, and they have ruled that it is in fact constitutional. They tweaked it a little bit. They made a few changes, but we've got to deal with it. All right, some would say, okay, if nobody will deal with it, then it'll fall flat on its face. Okay, that's fine. But what are you going to do about health care? How do you ensure that the appropriate level of care is there for the people who can't afford it, that the appropriate insurance is available to the people who aren't authorized or aren't otherwise authorized to take part in a healthcare system that has insurance and all. And there are no answers. So we're sort of in a catch-22, and I don't like being there. I'm not happy with the way a lot of this thing is played out. But I'm a business person, and a business person primarily wants to know, what are the conditions? What do I have to work with? What do I have to live with? Just tell me, and then I will adapt to ensure that I get through it and make a profit. But it's when you don't tell me, and when everything is a question mark, that it becomes very difficult to continue.
Let me reflect something back to you, and you can correct it for our viewers or speak to it. First of all, the Supreme Court decision gives the states the option to expand and not expand. Am I right in thinking, what I've seen, that a significant, if not almost major part of the business community, hospitals and chambers and others, have been encouraging and urging the expansion in Virginia?
Yes, they have, because there's no other mechanism by which you can collectively provide health insurance to the poorest people that have no other way to get health insurance. They have no way to get health insurance. This is the only way they get health care. Right now, these people walk into hospital emergency rooms, and federal law dictates that we must serve them. And I'm on a board of trustees of a fairly significant hospital here in Central Virginia, and it doesn't matter whether you have the ability to pay or not. You walk through that door or carried through that door, you get the best health care we can provide. And somebody's got to pay for that.
And I guess the hopes would be that should the expansion occur, many of those individuals would be getting some care from primary care physician or something, and wouldn't be putting something off to hit the hospital emergency room
until it got catastrophic. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Those ER beds are extraordinarily expensive. I mean, you're talking about $10,000 to $20,000 a day per bed, just to keep them operating. And you start thinking about that, that soon adds up to a lot of money.
Now, we will let our viewers know that you and I are having a conversation on Monday. At the time they're seeing this program, if they've been reading newspapers or watching some of the other news reports, they probably will have heard about your initial meeting.
Right.
But that's just the organizing meeting.
That's just the organizing meeting.
That's getting it going.
Getting some of the ground rules laid out and some of the basic information laid out, yes.
I think from what I understand, Secretary Hazel has been working for some time, particularly since the Supreme Court decision,
Right.
to do what needs to be done in the event that there is this expansion or the reforms that need to take place.
Well, he has concentrated a lot on the reform side of it. And you know, it is, to me, it's comforting that somebody of the caliber of Bill Hazel is the point person on this. He is a physician. He could be somewhere else making a lot more money,
Yes.
and having a whole lot fewer headaches. But he chose to serve in the capacity as Secretary of Health and Human Resources, and got dumped right into the middle of this debate. I don't know that we could have had a better person available at that time to do that. But his concentration has been on, okay, how do we do this as efficiently as possible? How do we make it work for the most people for the least amount of money? And that's the kind of thinking that we need to impose.
Mm-hmm. So this commission, having its first meeting here on Monday the 17th of June, has about a year to work through this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the authorization's in the budget, so
Right.
that's the authority. So it's something that may take a good most of that year to determine.
Absolutely. And you know, there are other pieces of this thing that nobody is sure how they're going to play out. The healthcare exchange, Virginia opted to not have its own exchange. I personally have felt for many years, long before the Affordable Care Act came along, that we needed to put in place something like an exchange to compile or put risk in a manageable business arena, and in that arena have mechanisms for health insurance to be offered at the best price possible. And you know, at the time, Virginia law precluded us from doing a lot of that. And there have been some attempts by retail merchants, chambers of commerce, to pull together groups in sort of an exchange-like mechanism. So I put legislation in last year to develop an exchange that the state had control over. And the other members of the legislature chose to not follow that path. They decided that we would turn it over to the federal exchange. I feel very uncertain about that. I think, you know, we did get legislation through that provided a mechanism for the State Corporation Commission to set up the regulatory structure for the health plans and the managed care plans that would be offered or could be offered. So at least we've got the oversight there, but still the access to the exchange and all will, a lot of that will get pointed to a federal exchange. And I think the insurance companies will be ready. I think the DMAS will be ready. I think that the State Corporation Commission will be ready. I'm just not sure that the federal people are going to be ready when the time comes to offer it. They're supposed to be ready to offer plans as early as October 1.
Of this year?
Of this year.
Wow.
And those plans would go into effect January 1, when the taxes and all go into effect. But they got a long way to go. And no evidence that they're getting there yet.
Well, Senator Watkins, time flies when we're having a good conversation. I really appreciate your being on This Week in Richmond, informing our viewers on both on the transportation and now on what's in front of you and your colleagues, those of you serving on that Medicaid Reform Commission.
Right.
So as the year moves along, we look forward to having you back and getting an update on how things are looking before the next session.
Well, David, I appreciate it, and I'll try to be more punctual with coming back to you.
We'll get you before the extremely busy time in
Okay.
January.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosts an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.